Hello everybody, welcome back to Roughing with, just me today, no Tausaliah. He is, busy with things. This week though, I thought, since there's only two fan bases that are still in the race right now, why not jump into mock draft season? It feels like mock draft season, So today we'll be running a mock draft. This one will be just kind of a general NFL mock draft. We will run through all 32 picks in the first round, obviously pending the order on just the last two picks. For all of you fans out there that are not a Seahawks or Patriots fan, welcome to the heartbreak. Was really rooting hard for the Broncos. Tough way to go out. But yeah, so I guess we'll just kind of jump in. I'm going to do a mock draft, before we jump into it, no trades. There are multiple spots that I feel like could have a trade. We won't do any of that today. Kind of a pretty vanilla mock draft to start off. But definitely fun to kind of kickstart the offseason and get into this aspect of, team building, really, and kind of where we go from here. So yeah, we'll get started. Here we go. Okay, on the clock, the Raiders. This one's pretty simple, pretty easy. It's Fernando Mendoza. The guy is the bona fide first overall pick. Really, there's I've kind of prepared options for each team at each slot. To me, there is really only if they don't take Fernando Mendoza, then respectfully, Vegas, what are you doing? The guy is a winner, high character, locker room guy. He's a leader of men. He's got all the tools to be a successful NFL quarterback. Most prolific college football season since Joey B. I'm not saying that he's the same tier of prospect or the same type of player, but I do think that he is more than worthy of the number one overall pick. I know there's been some buzz lately about, is Fernando Mendoza, kind of shade on his name. Guys, Fernando Mendoza is that guy. He is, in my opinion, the clear-cut number one overall pick. The quarterback value also is just, quarterbacks are quarterbacks, and everybody needs one. Raiders are no different. This is as easy as it gets. Fernando Mendoza, number one overall. That brings us to the Jets on the clock at number two. A roster with a lot of holes, with a lot of needs. I think there's a multitude of ways that they could go with this pick. I think this pick is pretty up in the air. I know there's been a lot of conversation about Dante Moore and him going back to school. Listen, at the end of the day, to me, I think there's routes that you could go, right? We have Caleb Downs on the board, Arvell Reese, and really I think Ruben Bain. Those are probably the three that you're looking at most closely. I know people have not talked about Caleb Downs to the Jets at 2. Maybe that's because the positional value, people are thinking in that sense. I'm gonna do it. I think Caleb Downs to the Jets at 2 overall. I think you need blue chip talent on that roster. I think you need leaders on both sides of the ball. Offensively, I think they're a lot closer than people realize. I think that O-line is pretty good. You need a quarterback, obviously, but I think you have Garrett Wilson. I think you feel better offensively than you do defensively. You have a lot of capital. I think Caleb Downs is, as everybody said, the number one player in the class, probably the best player in the class. Whether you classify him as a box safety or not, I think his value is more than just that stereotype or that archetype of player. I view him as a Kyle Hamilton, I'm not saying Nick Eman-Warrior's on that level, but I've heard him compared to a Kyle Hamilton and Brian Branch hybrid. maybe I'm crazy for drafting a safety at 2. I think you need the blue chip talent. I think he's the best player in the class. I think you need help all over. I think it's an immediate boost to your secondary, to your defense as a whole. He could fit the run really well he could fit the run really, really well. He plays the pass just as well. He's an instinctual player, a leader, high IQ, phenomenal tackler. That is a massive upgrade to your defense and that entire side of the ball. I think that's a huge win, even if it's at the number 2 overall pick. Call me crazy. Getting to the Cardinals at 3, I think you have options here as well. This one, I don't love really any fit in this slot. Like, I think the Cardinals, this spot to me kind of sucks. I think Arvell Reese you could go, but I don't know that he really fits their system. I don't know that that's the direction they want to go. Ultimately, I'm going to go. Football is and always will be a trench warfare game. I'm going to go Francis Mauigoa from Miami. He's been consistent. He's been reliable, been a very, very good on a championship caliber team this year. You need offensive line help. That to me feels like a safe pick, but also one that you need to make, and then maybe you're in the running for the quarterback class next year, or you take a shot on a guy in the later rounds. But to me, you're not taking Ty Simpson there. You're not taking really anybody else, in my opinion. But, moving on, I wanted to throw out there, I would think about Jeremiah Love at 3. Maybe I'm crazy. I would think about it, though. James Conner, he just had, went on IR for the whole year. Don't know what you're going to get out of him coming off the injury. You also had, every running back on that roster, it felt like, got injured. I picked up the backup, who I'm blanking on their name right now. Not going to come to me. Anyway, I think that's not out of the realm of possibility, especially considering the talent that Jeremiah Love is. Would it be crazy for a running back to go 3 overall? Yeah, but also he is that caliber of player. Anyway, number 4, Titans. This is where I think this is where I'm going to go Arvell Reese. I think that he is I'm not saying that he's Micah Parsons, but I think he could be that archetype, and I know that Micah Parsons is kind of the exception and not the rule. I know Isaiah Simmons was somewhat similar, except he was more of a safety linebacker hybrid than a linebacker edge hybrid. I just think Arvell Reese, from everything that I've seen, is such a disruptive player. Really, wherever you put him on the field, he's adequate in coverage. He's a phenomenal athlete. His play strength has been the talk of, town, I guess you could say. Like, people rave about his play strength, and for good reason. I think that is kind of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak. And especially going to a spot that needs defensive help. I think you put him, even if you put him behind Jeffrey Simmons or next to him, I think that's a really good, that's a recipe for success defensively. And I also think that hiring a defensive coach like Rob Saleh, that's going to be really fun for him to play around with. I will say, I know I talked to Tausaya about this. If Francis Mauigoa was there, I may have leaned that way, just because I think you need to protect your young franchise cornerstone in Cam Ward. And Tausaya highlighted the existing relationship between Mauigoa and Cam Ward, which I think is a great point. But ultimately, I think Mauigoa is off the board, and Arvell Reese is just a difference maker. So I think you add a major upgrade on the defensive side of the ball, which is always what you're looking for with a top 5 pick. So moving on to the Giants, this is where I'm kind of going to differ from where I feel like a lot of the popular media is at right now. This is like where my cursor is here. You can see, I think the popular pick for them tends to be the weapon, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson. To me, similar to what I was just talking about with Cam Ward, I think you want to protect your young franchise quarterback of the future. So to like, I definitely think that receiver is not something to like gloss over. I think you definitely consider it at this spot. I think with the injury concern with Tyson, I don't know that you feel comfortable like picking him at 5, especially considering that your, face of the franchise receiver is just coming off of a career or a season-ending injury. I think that much injury risk in one room is a little too risky for my liking. And then I think Carnell Tate would also be a great option. He's phenomenal. But like I said, I think you have Malik Neighbors coming back. Not sure where Wan'Dale Robinson ends up at free agency because I think he's a free agent. But to me, this pick is actually going to be Spencer Fano. Like I said, you need guard help, you need tackle help, you need help on the O-line in general. I think anytime that you make a decision to invest in protecting your young franchise quarterback, that's a smart one. And I'm going to keep saying it, football is a trench warfare game. Upgrade in the trenches, and give your young quarterback better protection and better chances to read the defense. That to me is always a smart move as a front office. Moving on to the Browns. This is where I'm actually going to, obviously there's multiple routes that they could go. I also think that that's a spot that could go O-line because, clearly they need it. To me though, I think I'm going to go Carnell Tate, another wide receiver spot. That's just, I think he's a premier talent. The only reason I'm going Tate over Tyson is that I think the injury concern could be legitimate. That said, I like the reason being that Jordan Tyson has played like half of the snaps in his college career just due to injury, right? When he's on the field, the dude is phenomenal. He's super fun to watch, but Carnell Tate, we can say it till we're blue in the face. Like the guy's an Ohio State wide receiver, and those typically pan out well, So you feel good about that. He's taken strides in this past year. Does he benefit from playing opposite of Jeremiah Smith and in that Ohio State offense? Maybe. But at the same time, he's been productive. He's dynamic. He's smooth. He's fluid. He catches, he plucks the ball out of the air. He's really good with body control. So many things that you want to see out of a premier number one option. And I think if you're Cleveland, like you just lack that entirely. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that pick. Getting on to the Commanders here, you have a lot of needs. You have an old roster. To me, Ruben Bain is too good to still be on the board. If he wasn't on the board, I would probably go like David Bailey maybe, but he is so disruptive. I don't care if his arms are like a T-Rex's. Watch him and you can just tell that the guy is like, he's a problem, As an offense, he's somebody that you have to account for and pay attention to on every down, run down, passing down, doesn't matter. He is just disruptive. He kind of, like, to me, falls into that game wrecker category almost, which is high praise. But, truly, like, the guy he's violent, he's disruptive, he's built like a brick shithouse. Maybe he has short arms, maybe that shows up in some situations, but at the same time, he did it against the best in college football and still was, very productive and disruptive. In the playoff run that Miami had, I think he had like 6 sacks or something, which is crazy. Like he's just that guy, like that's a cornerstone of your defense that you can build around on a defense that has a lot of needs, especially since like you haven't had an elite edge since you traded away Chase Young, which however you feel about that, but and then also was it Montez Sweat? Anyway, that gives you a cornerstone of your defense for the years to come. Moving on to the Saints. This is a super interesting spot, okay? I think a lot of people are going receiver here. There's no, like, guard isn't, I know it says a need there. That's not, there's nobody on the board here that fills that need and is a a premier player. And then D-line, like I think you think about Peter Woods, maybe you think about some other players. To me, this is where I go Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love is a freak, guys. Like Jeremiah Love is insane. He is I don't like he's a running back, but he's an offensive weapon. And I think you have pieces that you're really excited about on that O-line that are young. I think you give them a young running back to run behind who is truly special and has like legit all-pro talent. That's really exciting. And I also think I think that's a smart move too in terms of if you're moving forward with Tyler Shuck, which I think he's definitely earned that and shown enough promise to do that. I think one of the best things that you can do is give him a run game to complement what he can do. You know, I think having an effective run game is one of the best ways to help a young quarterback. That would be such a huge add to that room. And beyond the run game, he's just a weapon. Like I said, like receiving out of the backfield. Notre Dame lined him up all over the formation, in the slot, out wide, you know, in two back sets, like all of it. He is dynamic. He is genuinely a home run threat every time he gets his hands on the football. And he's a lot of fun to watch. I think that's somebody that immediately is a huge boost to your offense. And he's not getting outside of the top 10, guys, in my opinion. If the Saints don't take him, then Kansas City will. He is that type of dude. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, if Jeremiah Love is there, I think that should be the pick. Whether or not it would be, I don't know. I think that should be the pick. I think you need a premier running back. Isaiah Pacheco has been solid for a couple years, but he's had injury concerns, and he just hasn't quite been the same guy. Nobody else in that room is really worth a damn. They're good complementary pieces, but nobody that's really going to carry the load. You need wide receiver. You need offensive line help. To me, you just had Patrick Mahomes suffer a season-ending injury, and he got hit a lot more than he has in the past. I think Jawan Taylor is just flat-out bad. He's offsides all the time, even when they don't call it, and he's just not very good, in my opinion. I think you feel really, really good about Josh Simmons on the other side. I think he's freaky and going to be a franchise cornerstone, a pillar player for that offense in the years to come. Why not get him a bookend tackle to go on the other end and really you have, as much as I hate to say it and as much as I'm a Chiefs hater, you have, a Mount Rushmore type of quarterback. Get somebody protect him, that's got to be the train of thought. So for me, I think I'm going to go Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Both Utah tackles really exceptional. Both end up being top 10 picks. Carrying on to the Bengals. I've seen this be a spot where people go Peter Woods, people go Caleb Downs a lot of the time if he's still available. You need edge help, or you just need defensive playmakers. Now you also need offensive line help. Like I said, though, nobody really in this spot that would be worthy of that type of that high of a pick. So to me, David Bailey is still on the board. You run that draft card in. David Bailey is a freaking problem off the edge. He's a freak. The twitch, the bend, the hand usage, the instincts, all of it is exceptional. All of it are things that translate. Maybe he's not the most stout run defender, but he's going to be a productive pass rusher. You also don't know what's happening with Trey Hendrickson in free agency. He's probably out of there. You need legit playmakers. I know you just drafted Shamar Stewart last year. David Bailey is not that. David Bailey is a way more polished player and prospect, and somebody that I think steps in and is immediately a 10-sack, double-digit sack player as a rookie, barring injury or anything like that. But To me, that's just too premier of a talent to pass up on at the 10 spot. And, likely could be gone before then. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins. Quarterback room is a disaster. Not sure what they end up doing there. Could be a desirable spot for a quarterback in free agency. Just brought in a defensive head coach. They need a lot of help on defense as well. But you need wide receivers. Nobody knows what Tyreek Hill's future will be. The injury was gruesome, and so I don't know what the timeline is on that. I don't know if he's going to be back in Miami, if he's going to be back playing football, period. But I think you're not going quarterback here. You're not going to draft a Ty Simpson. And certainly there's nobody else that really is in that conversation. So you're really just looking for a roster piece here. Like I said, and we'll continue to say, no guard warranting this type of capital. To me, it's between Jermod McCoy and then Mekhi Lemon. I think both are premier options on either side of the ball. I think the only reason I'm going to go Mekhi Lemon over Jermod McCoy is just because the injury, I hate even saying it because I think with an ACL these days, it's, we have so much history of players returning from that injury and being productive and being better than they were before it, that I hate even using that as a knock against Jermod McCoy. But that said, he didn't play all year this year. Take that for what you will. Reason I'm going Mekhi Lemon over Jordan Tyson, I think you want somebody, maybe I should have gone Jordan Tyson. Both are outstanding players. There are some people that have Mekhi Lemon as their wide receiver 1. And likewise with Jordan Tyson, like I said, only concern is the injuries with Jordan Tyson. That is the reason that I think he falls, and then I also think every now and then we'll see a receiver fall that people are really high on. I think one of these receivers falls, whether that would be, Tate, Lemon, or Tyson. That's the top 3. I think one of them will end up falling out of, that top 11 or so. Moving on to Dallas. Another roster where I think most of your focus should be on defense. That offense is really well positioned. Curious to see what happens with George Pickens in free agency, whether he stays, whether he goes. I don't know if they can afford to keep him, but you still have CeeDee Lamb, you still have Jake Ferguson, you have some honestly solid receiving threats there that I don't think that's your primary concern. So to me, who I'm really looking at, I think you need upgrade. I think you need upgrades on the defensive side of the ball, and to me, that primarily comes in the secondary. You don't have Diggs anymore. I think Bland is kind of a question mark now. I don't know how you feel about him moving forward. To me, that's where I'm going to go Jermod McCoy. I think the talent is exceptional. Yes, he didn't play in 2025. As people have said, he is a top 5 pick based off of the 2024 tape, or, he's that type of blue chip talent. The only, red flag on his profile is that injury and not playing this year. That said, he's very far removed from it and is a premier talent when healthy, which he is. So, ACLs aren't like they were 30 years ago, 20 years ago. He should be, I think, great value at that pick. Moving on to LA. As of right now, Matthew Stafford will be back playing football in 2026. That clock is ticking. That said, 13 is not where you take his successor. There's too many good options on the board, and they're not in the quarterback room. So to me, this is where I'm looking at Jordan Tyson, honestly. You only have one more year of Devontae Adams. Really, your only other receiving threat outside of that, as exceptional as he is, and arguably the best in the league, Puka Nacua, your receiving room is pretty thin after that. So I think you take a serious look at Jordan Tyson. That said, I think where they need the most help is in the secondary. I've also thought about, I've thought a lot about like tackle for them, and like potentially taking somebody like a Caden Proctor or a Monroe Freeling. I think Monroe Freeling's stock is going to continue to trend up. He's young. He's got all the tools that you could ever want in a tackle prospect. He just has not played a ton of football. That said, he played at Georgia, and you're going up against the best of the best every Saturday. I think that's a guy that could continue to rise. So that's definitely something that I'm considering here at 13, especially wanting to protect Matthew Stafford. And then, honestly, also moving forward into whoever your next quarterback is. But ultimately, I think you need the help on the defensive side of the ball. Mansour Delane is going to be the pick. Moving on to the Ravens, this is, to me, the Jordan Tyson spot. I know you need interior D-line help. Jordan Tyson at this point is too good to pass up. Injury concerns, yes, they're there. I'm curious what this – yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people have Mekhi Lemon going there. I think fans want a wide receiver. Give Lamar another weapon. To me, though, Jordan Tyson, I haven't seen him go here because most of the time he's off the board well before this pick. I think if he lasts there, that is a slam dunk. Injury concerns, being what they are. Jordan Tyson on the field with Lamar Jackson would be so sick. And I honestly think he might immediately be your premier wide receiver. I think Zay Flowers is probably better suited as a 2 than a 1. And I think Jordan Tyson has that wide receiver 1 type of profile. Love that fit and haven't seen it a ton. And I guess kind of jumping right back into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Sonny Styles. I'll be honest, I've only really watched like 1 or 2 games of Sonny Styles, and I'm not as in love with him as pretty much all of the draft community, it seems. Like I've read things where people are comparing Sonny Styles and giving his comp as like Brian Urlacher, which is a hell of a comp. Anytime you got a Hall of Famer as your comp, that's high praise. That said, the tools are ridiculous, man. Like, and the profile in general is so unique. Like, rare that you have a 6'5" safety that ends up moving down to linebacker and looks as fluid as he is. I feel like a lot of the time when you have a guy that is moving from safety to linebacker, it's because they're not athletic enough or fluid enough in space. That is not the case with Sonny Styles. He can move, man. Like, he is large, but he is fluid. He is smooth. He understands spacing really well. He understands coverage really well. I think he plays the run well. I'm not like blown away with how he plays the run. I would like to see him trigger faster. I would like to see him trust his eyes more. I also, like, sometimes it's weird. Like, I feel like sometimes his intensity and his urgency is not very great, That said, he's a phenomenal prospect. I also think just the spot, like, this is a dream landing spot. I think Tampa Bay is, like, hoping and praying that Sonny Styles falls to them. In a class that isn't, like, super strong on the top end, he's a guy that is a blue chip type talent. Even if I'm not super high on him, I can see the traits and like what he brings to the table. He's also young at the position. Like, he's only been playing it for 2 years. I think there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of potential there that still has not been tapped into. And the frame and the tools just, I mean, they make you excited, Moving on, Jets at 16. To me, this is where Peter Woods comes off the board. You traded away Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys. This would kind of be your immediate replacement. I think they're similar. I'm not saying Peter Woods is the caliber of player that Quinnen Williams has been, but similar archetypes. And I think you just need disruption and playmakers on that defense. I think I think if you're adding freaking Caleb Downs and then Peter Woods, even if he's coming off of a down year at Clemson was a dumpster fire this year, had all the premier talent in the world and just did not perform at all. Not sure why, truth be told, but Peter Woods is really awesome, and I think it would be a great pick to the Jets who need defensive line help. And I think that would be really good value for them. Moving on to the Lions. This is another spot where I think about Monroe Freeling. I think about getting in them offensive line help. I think Caden Proctor would maybe be, somebody that you think about there. To me, though, ultimately, I think you need somebody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. And I think, to me, that is Cassius Howell. I think he's that more Nick Benito archetype, similar to David Bailey, where you are a freaky, twitchy, bendy, pass-rushing archetype more than you are a run fitter. But I also think you have better support for playing the run in that front. And I think when you get to passing downs, having Cassius Howell and Aiden Hutchinson on either end would be nasty. I also think playing in the front that just took, I'm blanking on his name, the Ohio State defensive tackle last year. That's, to my point, that's going to anchor the run. And I think that would be an awesome fit. Moving on, Minnesota Vikings. Keldrick Falk is there. Feels like good value. I also have Avion Terrell and Colton Hood as two guys that I am looking at on the board right now. Looking like Brian Flores is going to be back to coordinate the defense for another year. If by some miracle Jeremiah Love is there, that is a slam dunk pick that is happening 12 times out of 10. The odds of that happening are very low. To me, Jeremiah Love doesn't escape the top 10, as I've said. No center prospect or interior lineman that I feel like is worth the pick at this point. To me, I'm going to go Avion Terrell. Great man coverage would be awesome in that Brian Flores scheme. Really as simple as that. Panthers could go a lot of different options here. I've seen people want them to go with Denzel Boston. Caden McDonald, I think the interior D-line is really where I'm going to look in this spot. Keldrick Falk, not in love with that landing spot. To me, I'm going to go Caleb Banks. I think you need help on the interior of that D-line. And I thought about a linebacker here. I thought about like a C.J. Allen or an Anthony Hill Jr. If Sonny Styles was on the board, I think that's a slam dunk pick there. Ultimately, though, I don't think C.J. Allen is a top 20 player, and I don't think Anthony Hill is either. That said, I also do think there's some linebackers later in this draft. I think there's a good linebacker draft that I think you can find value later down the board. Take the interior D lineman, anchor, and shore up that defensive line. Going to the Cowboys, this is where Keldrick Falk comes off the board. Raw, toolsy, freaky tools, and young and ascending. I think that's a player that would fit well with Dallas. I think they have a solid defensive line, but I think that would be, if he can pan out and continue to ascend, I think that would be a really good pick and a really good value. Let's see, 21, Steelers. Again, another popular wide receiver spot. Don't have anybody outside of DK. And, we'll probably talk about the Mike McCarthy thing later. What a hire. But I thought a lot about Ty Simpson here. I thought a lot about Ty Simpson here. You need a quarterback of the future. And like what to that end. If you bring back Aaron Rodgers and you can have Ty Simpson sit under Aaron Rodgers for probably half the year, maybe the full year, I don't know. If he can develop under Aaron Rodgers, I think that would be awesome. I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that the Steelers, this might be kind of like a actual rebuild. And that said, I don't think you want to pick a quarterback to like kick that off, you know? To me, Denzel Boston, probably the best left on the board, and in a position of need. He's got really strong hands, smooth mover, really good routes, reliable. Everything that I think the Steelers need in that wide receiver room. He is not the take the top off that DK Metcalf is, and I think they complement each other well. I think he would work the middle of the field and the sidelines well, and give another reliable option to whoever that quarterback is going into next year. 22, Chargers need offensive line help desperately. You have a generational quarterback and you can't keep him upright. Granted, they've had injury issues on the offensive line. Hopefully you can get Rashawn Slater back healthy and playing elite football like the contract that you paid him would suggest. You also have Joe Alt, who's just like truly generational at that position and hopefully continues to ascend and prove that. To me, I'm going to go Vega Ione. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I think you need to shore up the interior of that O-line, and that helps you do that. And just like I said, I've said multiple times in this video, anytime I can make a premier pick to better protect my franchise quarterback, in my book, that is always a good idea. Moving on, Eagles 23. A couple of options here. To me, it's going to be TJ Parker, who's really like the primary guy that I'm looking at there. I think you could think about Kenyon Sadiq, right? Dallas Goedert. I don't know. I don't love that. And then I also think Proctor or Freeling are both definitely, kind of highlighted. I don't know how many more years you get out of Lane Johnson. I know he said that he wants to play out his contract until 2028. You need guard help. I think you could kick Proctor in, and then hopefully develop him, and maybe ends up being a really good guard. Maybe you end up moving him back out to tackle once Lane Johnson hangs it up. I think that versatility would be really, really nice. For that reason, I'm going to go Caden Proctor. The size you cannot teach. He's a freaky athlete at that size. He just needs refinement. Browns. Browns need a lot, right? Already took Carnell Tate. For that reason, I don't love the idea of Casey Concepcion. I don't think you go Caden McDonald, TJ Parker, no. Again, not a spot. I know quarterback is a need. I'm not going Ty Simpson. That quarterback room is a disaster enough as it is. I don't think adding another young, unrefined quarterback is the answer there. Man. Let me think. To me, I'm going to go Monroe Freeling. I think anytime you can upgrade the O-line, it's a trench warfare game. Do it. Bears. This has been a really popular TJ Parker and Caden McDonald spot. I think... I'm going off script a little bit here. I also think you could think about CJ Allen. Don't love the linebackers they have there. I'm going to go TJ Parker. I think TJ Parker is just somebody that I think the ceiling is high. I think people were higher on him last year. Obviously, he was being talked about like a top 5 pick coming out of after the draft and everything. Looking forward to this year. He has not performed like that. His development has just kind of stunted in this past year and didn't have nearly as productive of a year. But I think the tools are there. I think he's, a really good athlete at his size. I think he's got, like I said, I think he's got the tools to grow into a really, really solid edge. Moving on to the Bills. Okay. Bills. Man, so many directions that we could go here. I know everybody is clamoring for that pick right there or that pick right there. Everybody wants the Bills to take a wide receiver. I'm not even going to jump into the conversation about how we just hired Joe Brady. A conversation for another time. God. Anyway. A lot of options and routes that we could go here. To me, Josh Allen won an MVP last year with just about the same wide receiver core. He has been productive every year, pretty much regardless of who he's throwing the ball to. I think it would be nice, obviously it would be really, really nice to get him a premier option. And honestly, it's funny because I view KC, I think his body type and his gait are really similar, honestly, to Khalil Shakir. I think he's got more juice than Shakir, but they're similar size. Like I said, similar gait, similar body type. I think KC Concepcion just has a little extra juice and extra gear. And I really, honestly, I do like that fit. I think Buffalo needs a receiver that can threaten a defense vertically, take the top off, open up underneath space. I don't know that I'm going to draft that with the 26th overall pick. To me, Akeem Mesidor, you are a Buffalo Bill. He might be the second best edge in the class. He's awesome. The only thing about him is that he's old as hell. He's going to play his rookie season at 25, which is insane. That said, I think Buffalo's uniquely suited to actually be a good spot for that. You need a player that has a high floor and is going to be immediately productive, because you need immediate production in Josh Allen's prime years, right? Akeem Mesidor fits that bill. You need an edge rusher. Maybe Joey Bosa comes back, but even if he does, I don't know that you're going to get as much production out of him. I think you got more than you expected out of him this year. Even if he's back, I think Akeem Mesidor is probably an upgrade. Not probably, I think he is an upgrade. He's got juice off the edge. He's got bend. He's got size. He's great with his hands. He had a productive playoff just like Ruben Bain. They're similar in a lot of ways, honestly. I think he's more than solid enough against the run, and I think he's really truly one of the better pass rushers in the class. I really like that pick. The only thing is that he's old, but you need immediate production. I don't hate that, Moving on, Niners. Boom. Kenyon Sadiq. George Kittle just suffered a blown Achilles, and probably, even if he comes back toward the end of next year, or whenever he comes back, I don't know what Achilles recovery looks like these days. He is going to need somebody in that role. That offense flourishes with George Kittle in the lineup. I think Kenyon Sadiq, he's nowhere near the blocker that George Kittle is, but he is a weapon at tight end. He's such a versatile player. And even when you get George Kittle back, imagine a 2 tight end set with him and Kenyon Sadiq and Kyle Shanahan calling the freaking plays, man. Like, that would be nasty. That would be so nasty. I think you think about KC. I think you think about maybe a few other players here. Ultimately, I think Kenyon Sadiq is too good and in a position of need for you to pass up. Texans, 28. This is tricky. I think Caden McDonald's too good to pass up. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Caden McDonald, too good to pass up. Shore up that defensive line. Defensive line pick, D'Amico Ryans, makes sense. LA now back on the clock at 29. This is interesting. I think you think about CJ Allen. I think they could use an upgrade at linebacker. I don't know that you go there. I think you think about Casey Concepcion, honestly. Like I said, like Devontae you have for one more year. Beyond that, you have Puka and then really nobody else. Also, God, just imagine a receiver room with Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and freaking Casey Concepcion. Holy moly, that would be actually insane. That said, I think it's too good of an opportunity to draft your quarterback of the future into a great situation where he can be mentored because he needs time to develop and reps and practice. Being mentored by Matthew Stafford and then having the opportunity to step into really the starting role next year or whenever Stafford hangs it up. I think that's too good an opportunity to pass up. Ty Simpson with Sean McVay with Matthew Stafford, to me, that is match made in heaven type of stuff. So I love that pick. I also feel like the value fits a lot better there toward the end of the first rather than somewhere in the middle. Getting to the end here, guys, it's out of order. It'll go Broncos at 30, then Patriots probably at 31, and Seahawks at 32. For the Broncos at 30, that's sick. That is so sick. If Kenyon Sadiq made it, that's hard to pass up. I would probably go Kenyon Sadiq over Casey. For the Broncos, though, I think you need to add to that receiving room. Courtland Sutton, I said this, I don't remember when. He's like the best, worst wide receiver in the league. It is so infuriating watching him drop, like, maybe not like easy catches, but like definitely within his ability to complete the play. And he just like drops these like run-of-the-mill catches, and then he'll make like the most outrageous catches. And you're like, there's just zero like kind of dependability sometimes, it feels like, with him. Like you can go to him and he'll drop the easiest pass, catches the craziest shit, and then you're left scratching your head a little bit. Also really think that CJ Allen or Anthony Hill Jr. are worth serious consideration there. I think we need major help in the linebacking room. I know this podcast has kind of, had things to say about Alex Singleton. Ultimately, though, you need help in that linebacker room. You need to upgrade from Alex Singleton. You need somebody that's going to be healthy more than what you've gotten really out of that whole room, So ultimately, though, I think Casey Concepcion is just too good to pass up here. I think he adds another explosive and reliable element to that offense. I think Bo Nix with him, and then with Pat Bryant and however many years left you have of Courtland Sutton, like that would be sick. And then, I think Mims remains your kind of gadget guy, even though I think like he's just so effective when he gets involved. Anyway, Casey Concepcion to the Broncos. Love that. Final two here. Patriots at 31. Again, because this is out of order. Man, I think you could use an upgrade at linebacker. Vrabes being the guy on that staff, I think it would be hard to pass that up. I also think you could use... I'm not in love with any of the... Like, R. Mason Thomas, maybe. That actually might be where I go. Because Harold Landry, you're not getting a whole lot more out of. Going to go R. Mason Thomas. Fills a need. Great player. Finally, Seahawks at 32. Really great roster. I think in this spot, I'd think about CJ Allen. That might be where. I think I'm between Pregnon and CJ Allen. Ultimately, I'm going to go CJ Allen because I think Mike McDonald would love him in the middle of his defense. And that'll do it, folks. Here we go. Holy moly. There we go. Okay. Like I said, our first mock of the year. Let us know your favorite pick. Let us know the pick that you're most pissed off about. If you're a fan of any of these teams, let us know who you wanted to, have selected. We'd love to hear it all in the comments. Don't be surprised when April rolls around and it gets drafted exactly like this, okay? If you want to bet on any of this, obviously I'm kidding. For legal reasons, I'm kidding. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you guys again next week. Not sure really what we'll have in store, but we are, we keep saying it, we're going to dive more into roster construction and I want to do episodes for the Bills where we're doing mock drafts, and trying to build out that roster. We'll do that for other franchises as well, I'm sure. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll have more fantasy content as well. We'll be getting into dynasty drafts and really diving into that. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch you next week. Peace.